to be your host, Anna Tavis, Academic Director of Human Capital Management Program at NYU SPS, where we are building the Center for the Future of Work. And our mission is to track, study, and respond to the trends that are shaping the current workplace. This year, guest speaker series is going to focus on what organizations are actually doing in reimagining and reshaping their workplace. And this Rethinking Work very first session, we are very honored and delighted to bring to you our first guest speaker, Ali Marano, who is the Global Head of Tech for Social Good and firm-wide talent at JP Chase. We specifically asked Ali to talk about not only what she does, but also what brought her to do this amazing work at JP Chase. And so without further ado, I'm going to invite Ali to kick us off. And for everyone on this webinar, please feel free to leave your questions in the Q&A tab in this webinar, and we will be making time for you for the discussion after Ali's presentation. So I am absolutely thrilled to invite Ali to start her story.
Thanks so much, Anna. It is really a pleasure to be here today. It's funny, I love how you set it up and said, she's going to talk about what got her to do this, and not planned, but my first slide, it's really quite fortuitous in the sense of saying, like, I am a misfit. So, and I feel like I might be talking to a group of others, and I hope that doesn't come across as offensive. But Steve Jobs, if you know, told the world to think differently. He praised the crazy ones. Steve said, let's celebrate the rebels. Let's celebrate the brown pegs going into square holes. When you dare to challenge the status quo, and that's been quite a theme in my career, when you dare to challenge the status quo, you have the potential to push the human race forward. You can change the world, and I wholeheartedly believe that that's what we all need to do. We need to get comfortable saying that this might not be the same way we need to do it over and over again. And I think if the pandemic taught us anything, it's quite that. We suddenly said, blank page, we weren't prepared for this. How can we think differently? And so many amazing things came out of that, and how we can think about talent, how we can think about the way that we do business, how the way we treat our customers. So I am a misfit, and I'm going to talk to you today about how that I think that is a huge value add to the work that I do and the work that I think all of you do as well. So there are major shifts, and I'm sure you're seeing this today, that we now have a very conscious consumer. We have a conscious employee as well, and trust has become the defining factor here. It's been a defining factor, as you know, for centuries, and it's grown over time. However, we've seen a decline in trust, and that's unfortunate, but for a multiple of reasons, what's happening is it's leaving people to search elsewhere. It's leaving people to say, where else can I find trust? And they're actually looking to the places that they work and do business. And they're saying, I expect more from you. I expect you to believe in the things that matter most to me. And people and consumers, they're saying, how do I know that you're going to support the things that matter to me? And the two are coming together. Flipping the wrong page. There we go. So when consumers become more conscious, this brings about a sense of purpose. Now, when we think of purpose, you'll hear it over and over again. It's becoming the new impact. It's becoming the word that gets dropped over and over again. But what do we mean when we say purpose? And what I really talk about here is that you're authentically connecting to what matters most, both to your clients, to your customers, and your talent, and more importantly, the community. And authenticity is something I'll talk about more in a few minutes. But when customers and clients see you doing this in authentic ways, they're more likely to work with you. They're more likely to want to do business with you. They're more likely to recommend you to others. It's a huge differentiator in the way that they're actually interacting with you and your companies. Every time you spend money, you're casting a vote for what you want in the world. Think about that for a minute. This is it's no longer about you are a company and you have great teams. You have great products. You have great services. Right now, we're saying we need great staff. We need to be great to our community. We need to understand what their needs are as individuals who are engaging with us in our as users, as well as customers of our business and services. That last part, sometimes when we ask people to do it in authentic ways, can be scary. They worry about being viewed as inauthentic. You know, when I talk to small business owners and people who are clients of my company at JPMorgan Chase, they say, what if they find out that, you know, we're just getting started here? You know what, we're better off not doing it. We'll just write a report, we'll put it out there and people will see what we've done. Or they'll make a big philanthropic donation. They'll say, you know what, that's okay, that's enough. But for most who are watching from the outside, and you're in that group as well, that can start appearing, and more it's starting to appear like window dressing. And they're starting to say, well, what's really happening behind that window? What's really happening, you know, to kind of like, if you kind of push away some of the chaos that we're seeing today, and customers are making decisions about where they do business and where they want to work. And that's really kind of something to keep in mind. So every time you engage with the community, you're helping people think about where should they be staying connected to longer term. So you probably know this. I was in a meeting just the other day and the individual said, myth, there is a war for talent. Reality, the war is over, let's move on. That doesn't mean that talent everybody's got everything that they need. What's interesting is just the way that we're thinking about talent. We've never been in a more competitive job market. I wouldn't necessarily say it's a war, but current employers and future talent are evaluating every aspect of potential opportunities, from their paycheck to purpose-filled work. And employees and future talent want, and in many cases actually can have it all. And if it's not in their current situation, they're going to find a better one. So the employment experience has never been more important. And at my company, we recognize that for quite some time. And we really believe that our long-term success depends upon that. This isn't just about millennials, though it is the first stat that I'm sharing with you, but millennials will take a job if they think their employers actually care about a corporate and have corporate social responsibility with them. We know that employees want to find a sense of purpose, and most companies actually are performing better when they actually have their employees connected to their sense of purpose as well. So this is a bit kind of like hitting you over the head with the same thought as we're going through, but it's a key sense of pride. You know, think about the individual who shows up, and usually you have 3 individuals when you're within a company or within your customer base. There are those who are active participants who are actively engaging in purpose-based programming, actively reading and absorbing everything that you're sharing with them. There are those who are just satisfied to know that you're doing it. It's a little bit of that kind of like, it's okay, I don't need to do it, but it's so nice to be able to be at a cocktail party and say, my company does this. I may not be the one engaged directly, but I can say something in a prideful way about this. And then there's those who are just like, listen, I came here to buy your service. I came here to do work. I'm not necessarily going to engage, and that's okay. You don't need to spend your time on that population and trying to convince those. Having 2/3 of the mix of the individuals who are connected to what you're doing is really the right way to focus your time. And that's a great way for us to be thinking about talent and customers going forward. Okay, I'm going to say this, and this is probably this is like the word for me for the year is authenticity, where some people are saying it's impact or saying it's purpose. And I know this is a conversation about purpose. I think it's about authenticity. So how do you get started? How do you really come across as being authentic in this space, which has become so crowded with individuals talking about this space? And it's really about starting with what matters most. What type of organization are you running? What do you think your customers care about? What do you think your staff care about? What do you care about? So when you start with that, then you're showing and not telling. It's that classic thing that we teach our preschoolers when they go in. It's like, show, not tell. Talk to me, walk the walk, and actually be able to create tangible, really diverse and equitable programming for individuals to kind of show what type of opportunities they can have to engage with their companies. And you just make it real. So the integration of proven programming is really going to be a differentiator for companies out there. When there's a wealth of opportunity and a wealth of choices for individuals, how do you stand out? How do you differentiate yourself is something that I think is critical, that leads back to the authenticity that I'm talking about. And then finally, fostering empathy. So empathy is about when you're creating a workforce where individuals feel like they can walk a mile in somebody else's shoes, but how you do that and how you translate it externally is critical. And giving people opportunities to do so is also critical. And this is a true, strong leadership skill that I'm sure many of you are familiar with. So at JPMorgan, this is how I do it. If you caught me in an elevator, you catch me here today, this is what I would say to you. You know, the success of our firm, this is a bit of my elevator pitch. It really depends on the communities that we're serving. So we're not a philanthropy. We're not an organization that's saying this is, I'm not doing this in a global philanthropy where I'm giving money out. This is really about programming. This is about programming from youth to skilled volunteerism. I'll talk about that in just a second. that's reflecting the needs of the community that we're serving. And that's our stakeholder community. So we look at it from a customer-centric point of view, and that customer can get defined in any number of ways based on the business that you're serving. But we really believe, and this might sound a little corny, is that if we're an engaged corporate citizen, and as a bank, we serve a community. And so we want to be an engaged corporate citizen and part of that community, that it really comes down to having a better place to work and a better place to do business. So we do this in 4 ways. We say that we are kind of, I'll let you soak this in for a second, but we say that we have 4 key goals. And when we do this, we say this is kind of our reason for being, or our North Star, if you will. So we're focusing on that purpose culture and an empathetic workforce. We're exposing our staff to core leadership skills. We're creating that equitable programming where others might think about this differently. That's critical for us. And we're enabling those meaningful connections to the philanthropic interests of our employees and customers. So individuals come in and they say, hey, I'm looking to bank with you. And then in conversation, because it's always a conversation with our customers, it comes up that an individual has a passion for or is engaged with the environment, or they might be thinking about something in education. And we talk to them about how we can help connect in really authentic ways to those interests that they have in the services that we would deliver. And I can talk more about that. So why does this matter? Why do this? You know, we're talking about, and at this, we can start here, but not necessarily the most, is really with the brand. How do you differentiate amongst your customers? What are you going to do that's different when everybody has choice? Think about the culture. Think about how you're going to foster that environment. It's going to attract individuals that are going to feel that you're offering a program that includes them, that is part of their story, that's going to connect with them. Then there's diversity. And when I say diversity, you know, it's not just about what you can count. It's not just about what you can see. It's also about skills. It's about the way somebody's educated. It's about the background that somebody has. There's a lot of different ways that you can be thinking about diversity and helping people see that there's a lot of different opportunity for them to engage with you. Then there's innovation. So back to Steve Jobs, we're getting people to think differently. When you're using purpose-based programming, it's not typical. It's not a way that we've typically gone about it, and we're actually helping people step outside of their comfort zones. And in doing so, people are going to think differently and come at it with a solution or ideas that are not quite as BAU or business as usual for their day-to-day. Engagement. We know that we're looking for points of connection. We're trying to, in many ways, when individuals choose to come into an office, to earn people's commutes. So we say that as like, if you're going to pick yourself up, bring yourself into an office, it better be worth it. So how do we find ways to connect you in with your peers, connect you in with your community that matter? And then finally, it is that community. This is probably the most popular one when I talk to my stakeholders in my community. What's cited? People want that sense of community. When we sit here, and as I sit here in my home and we talk, people sometimes feel disconnected. While there's a huge value to flexibility and really meeting people where they are, we're still humans. And we can't forget that we're humans at our core. And to find a way to connect and to give people that sense of purpose in doing so is a true value add in bringing people together. So this is the last slide, and I'm going through this somewhat with intention, just go a little bit faster so that we can have a conversation. But this is how we do it here at my company. But there's so many different ways to go about this. And I want to stress that, you know, while this comes across as being corporate social responsibility and philanthropy, it's different. It's very much programming. When you hear terms, and you hear a lot of these terms interchangeably, when you hear terms like global philanthropy, the way that we look at it, that's more financial in the sense of giving money out in the form of grants. Then you have things like CSR, corporate social responsibility. By all means, this definitely has a connection to the CSR space, but it's not quite exclusively in a CSR function because of the way that it's focused on purpose. And often CSR is more solely external facing and forgets about the internal and the staff and how what you're doing impacts your staff and the talent that you're trying to attract. And then finally, there's DEI and ESG, lots of acronyms. So DE&I, of course, we're actually touching areas that people are counting and they're focusing on by nature of who we're serving, but it's not solely a DE&I function. And ESG, especially for a financial services firm, and this is probably one of the newest terms that gets dropped a lot lately, that's much more connected to a financial product, if you will. So what kind of bond, what kind of green bond, what kind of activity can I engage in or invest in that will have a connection to something that has a social impact or a social good? That's not what we do. We partner with all these different groups, and it's great to have those different areas to connect with within the bank. That's not what we do. What we do is we focus on youth. We focus on creative programming and really thinking about how do we give exploration and experience opportunities to youth that are under 18 around the world. We leverage the model of hackathon. So think like quick cooking show. I gave you 5 ingredients, now go make me a gourmet meal. We do that with ideas. We do it around technology, and we use it as a way to ideate with organizations to really think about what the possibility could be. And then we actually use it as a way to actually create a pipeline for talent into the firm. Emerging talent is critical. I think in the opening, Anna might have said that I was the head of talent. I'm the head of emerging talent, so a little bit different. So talent in a traditional firm like JP Morgan is going to be, especially with a focus on early career, is typically focused on individuals who have come out of a university or campus related talent, or come from a more traditional background. We call emerging talent, and this is pretty much, it's an up and coming term in the industry, really individuals who may have just been educated differently. It's a skills first approach. And we're saying, well, a degree is a nice factor to know about. It's not really a deciding factor. We think that talent can get their skills in any number of ways, and especially in the early career stages, we really want to find that talent and welcome them into the firm so that we're bringing these individuals into the opportunity for family sustaining jobs and really seeing how they can be integrated into the day-to-day work that we have at the firm. Force for Good is a bit of a sister program to Social Good Hacks. So everything we start and we ideate, we like to say nothing ends up on a so-called digital shelf. We build out full-blown solutions for all of our clients. And that's been a great way for us to kind of spread our wealth and really get into a very personal way with our communities and our customers, and really kind of build out things that will help them drive their missions. And then finally, just engaging in a DEI way. We go to a lot of conferences, we have a lot of memberships and things that we're focusing on to kind of say, how can we better connect and be in the conversation so that we're not, because we don't know it all. We need to know what other people are talking about. We need to be a part of that dialogue so that we can better support. So I'll pause there. I'm happy to flip back to slides later, but I'm going to stop the share and then have a great conversation with the rest of you.
Yeah. So Ali, if I could get us started, because you and I had many conversations prior to this, and what really interests me, and I think a lot of people on this call as well, is that new focus on emerging talent. So people with like what you called skills-based approach to talent. Could you give us a little bit more of an overview of what those programs are and how do you find that talent? Because that's definitely a big challenge for many organizations right now who are so used to going to the universities like NYU and recruiting cohorts of graduates. But now companies are taking a very different approach to cultivating that talent. Could you give us a little bit of a inside view of what you do?
Absolutely. So emerging talent doesn't say that a university degree is not important. It's definitely not that. What it means is that, as I said before, it's a data point in somebody's background. But what we say is we believe people can be educated in any number of ways. So at my company, we have over 50 programs that are focused in this way. And it's a focus on early career. So people who are kind of 0 to 3 years of experience. And because of the way that we've been designed historically, we have a very traditional approach where we typically say individuals are coming off of a university campus, which by challenge, that means that they're typically only available 1, if not maybe 2 times per year. Excuse me, one quick second. I'm going to close that so you guys don't hear my dog barking. All right, the beauty of working at home. So when we do that and when you say talent is only available a couple of times per year, that means that hiring managers have to wait. And you're saying to them, okay, I know that you had some attrition, think great attrition, but you know what? We'll get you somebody in about 6 months or maybe even a year. And that's not a good answer. So where we focused is that we know that a lot of individuals during the pandemic and very much pre-pandemic have decided, I want to get my education differently. Or you know what? I got my education. I do have a 4-year degree, but it's not what I want to do post-school. So how do I find a role within a company like JP Morgan to actually accept what I've learned and understand my background? So we've created a lot of pre-programming or pre-employment opportunities that we call internships or apprenticeships in a very formal way, where we bring people in for opportunities to kind of get to know them. They get to know us, and we create opportunities that could be multi-week to multi-month or even multi-year for individuals to come in. So a few examples of that. It could be focused on niche programming or niche skills that we need. One of our favorite in the New York area is actually CareerWise. CareerWise is a high school program. I happen to, full disclaimer, I sit on the board of CareerWise. but it's a high school apprenticeship program where we're actually now partnering with the city of New York to welcome individuals in the junior year of high school. So when they're, I think, 16 years old, they come in for 16 hours a week and actually work with companies like mine. And then actually during the summer, they can increase that time. And when they go into their senior year, they work for 24 hours across the week. The value of doing that is actually these individuals are now earning academic credit that will go towards their high school education. And that will actually give them the ability to graduate out of high school with a better direction of what they want to do. We put them on roles like junior project managers, junior coders, and they're getting that type of experience. And then at the end of that, we have the opportunity to say, okay, well, you know what, this could be a great 2 years. And I welcome you to go on to university after this. Or maybe you come and work with us part-time, or for many, we've actually offered them full-time jobs. So they're making a decision where they might not have otherwise known what they wanted to do. They might start working with us full-time, and then during that time, get a better sense of what they want to do next. And then maybe they start going back to university, but with a very clear direction about what they want to do. And then the value add for them is that now we can help pay for it because we'll be able to contribute to that cost of university. At a more adult level, we do programming that might focus on a particular population. So we have a great program that we call Project Mosaic, which is focused on the transgender population. So think about a group of individuals that are now in a position where they're trying to, one, figure out how to represent themselves, but then also figure out how do I represent myself into a company where I'm not sure which vocabulary I can use. I have to think about my pronouns and they might be very uncomfortable. We have a program in that we call Project Mosaic where we're welcoming these individuals in and they're actually coming in and working directly in our branches. So we're saying, listen, we're not trying to bring you in and hide you. We want to bring you in and celebrate you. So these individuals come in and they have opportunities to work in different branches around the country and really hone their skills. And it's actually become a template for a lot of our programming across the bank. So they come in, we do kind of, again, like this one's more of an internship and it's multi-month that they come in, and then we look to convert them to full-time roles upon the completion.
That's so fascinating. Another aspect of your job, Ali, I found out is that it is a global job. You mentioned New York City and how closely you work within the New York City. That's where you're headquartered, but you're actually a very global organization. Can you give us a little bit of an insight how you manage your team? And I've heard that you have 60 people working in your line of business. So if you could give us a little bit of an insight, how are you doing this globally?
Absolutely. So we've got 60 people approximately across our global team. JP Morgan has nearly 300,000 people now around the world. We operate in over 68 countries. I think we're actually due to a couple of different acquisitions. We might be over 70 in a few weeks. So we are quite global, but we recognize that when you're doing purpose-based programming, the biggest value is when you're doing it on a local level. So what we've done is a bit of a hub and spoke type model where we'll say, think youth programming. So while I have a global lead sitting in one part of the world, that global lead will have regional leads in different parts of the world. So we break it up by regions where I'll have kind of North and South America. I'll have individuals that are sitting, they'll be dedicated there, which you can sometimes have a couple because obviously so many different cultures. We'll have people focused in EMEA and then Asia Pacific and India as well. So that's critical to our success because they can then be local. They can be on the ground and figuring out what's most important to the individuals in those communities. And that's where we do our best work. So when we say that we're giving back in our backyard, that's when we're making the biggest impact. And I think you're still on mute for a second.
Yes, very, very impressive, especially how you do it at a global scale. Very difficult. Another question I have, just to take you back, and I'm hoping that our audience will start sending us questions here. But I'm also fascinated. You started out by saying you were a misfit. Clearly, these are fairly new roles in companies, people doing what you are doing. Can you give us a little bit of an insight as to what kinds of people are going to be recruited or working for companies like JP Morgan Chase and doing this type of work? Because it used to be kind of in the nonprofit sector in a very different, a different domain than the corporate world, right? So how does it work for you, and what recommendations can you make for people who might be wanting to jump into a role like yours and figuring out what would it take?
So my path I was just about to say my path was not a traditional one, but I don't really know what a traditional path is. I think that that's probably a phrase that most people can say, that the path they got them today is not one that actually makes as, I think it was more of a lattice as opposed to a ladder, kind of moving around. That being said, I started my background, I was a little bit in corporate, but then spent most of my career prior to JP Morgan actually in the nonprofit or the social goods sector, and had an opportunity to join JP Morgan, but had a really kind of deep background in social good coming in, where to the point that I was very much an outsider when I came in. My colleagues in the space were like, uh-oh, you're going over to the dark side. What are you going to do there? And I became what somebody quickly termed as an intrapreneur. So really kind of trying to advocate and help people understand why was I doing what I was doing and why was this important to them, but spending the time trying to understand the business and recognize how can I connect this back to the business value. What's been interesting over my time there, and now been there over 10 years, is really to watch who wants to work in our space. So we did not start at 60 people. We started with just me and have grown it over time. But those who've been most successful have kind of had a mix of qualities. One, they're very flexible. They're very resilient individuals. They have a passion for social good. Some of them have actually been hired directly out of the social good sector. Some of them are kind of right out of, high school, university, you name it. And they're coming in and we can kind of shape their feeling. Others are saying, they'll knock on our door, and what's interesting is they'll just say like, you know what, I've been doing this as my side hustle for quite some time, off the side of my desk for quite some time. I'd love for this to become my day job. I didn't know that was a possibility, which has been amazing. The ones that don't fit are interesting. And I think we talked about this, where we were saying, it's the individual who's kind of a career changer or at a different stage of their life. And you get those calls and the individual like, hi, Allie, somebody told me I should talk to you. I'm at this stage in my career where like, I've done it all. I'm in treasury, I'm a senior director in the treasury department here at the firm, and I'm ready for the next thing. And I've always been a passionate individual. I love giving back. So I thought, what could I do in your space? And you kind of just sit there and you probably like, you know what? I've got a better answer for you. Why don't we just swap jobs? You come in my space and you run things and I'll go run treasury. And they're like, I didn't know you had a background in treasury. I'm like, no, I don't. Do you have a background in social impact? And you kind of just have this like awkward pause. And it's not to be kind of passive aggressive. And I know that can sound that way. It's more to say like, there's a lot to learn in this space and how to deal with individuals and how to do it from a place of authenticity. It's not easy to figure out the right way to give back, or more people would be doing it. We say it's a new job, but I've been doing this for, 20 years. It's just that the vocabulary for how we do it is suddenly becoming more sophisticated. And I think that's why people think it's a new thing, but it's not. There's been so many of us doing this for quite some time. I can name them and we can talk. And we're definitely a group of misfits that kind of love hanging out together. But there's a lot of people that make sense to be in this space. And I think you can be a career changer and do this, but don't take it lightly. Don't take it like, oh, this is just simply easy. It's the same like somebody can call somebody up and say, you know what, Anna, I just want to give back. I know this particular industry really well. Can I just go teach? It's like, because I can just like throw me in a classroom. Like, no, you cannot just go teach. You need to understand how to be an educator, how to connect with your class, how to actually really engage a room. It's just a skill that can be learned, but it's not to be assumed. And I think that's probably the most important thing to understand.
I love it. The skill that could be learned, but not assumed that you could just do it because you did 40 years at Treasury or 40 years in a job, whatever role. We have two very interesting questions. Could you provide more insight on equitable career programming, specifically for early career cohort programs? When you have a group of entry-level associates joining the company and eager to move ahead to the company, how do you provide an equitable process wherein they meet the needs of the employee, but also balance the business needs?
So when we talk about equitable programming, what I have advocated for is that it needs to be, we're treating the same. The only thing that I'm making different is the criteria. So I've now changed and said, I'm removing from the filter criteria that you need to have a university degree. We had way too many jobs that were requiring a university degree just because it felt like it was a good filter criteria. So we open up a new job requisition and we can get thousands of applicants. An easy way for a company like mine historically to actually filter out who's the right ones to focus on, because there's just too many to provision, which is, you know what, won't focus on the ones that don't have a university degree. but we recognized they were leaving so many great and talented individuals on the table in doing so. So that's off the table. So everybody, it's really about your skills. When I said skills first, when an individual comes in though, what's critical is that they come in at the same pay, they come in with the same job opportunity and the same career path. They're going into the same programming, the same cohorts or groups that they may go in, and they have the same opportunity to progress in their career. That's what I'm referring to when I'm talking about the equitable programming. So it's not like, oh, because you have a university degree, I'll pay you a little bit more, because maybe you have loans, so I should pay you more, so you have to pay back your loans. It's like, no. Definitely that came up though, to be fair. That came up from some individuals in the firm. So we'll just pay them a little bit more because they got loans. No. Why don't we ask the individuals who don't have the university degrees all the different loans that they have? Maybe they have a mortgage, and actually more often than not, they do. So we're getting individuals who might be early in their career, but more mature in their years. So individuals that are often married, that have kids, that have childcare expenses, but yet I'm going to pay some 20-something because they've got university loans, but I won't pay some 25 or old 30-something more because they have kids and they have childcare. So that comes off the table. It really comes back to a focus on skills and the role that they're going to be focused on. And it needs to have a career path. So when we say family sustaining job, it's not just saying, okay, I'm moving you from one thing to another and you're getting paid more. I don't want to move you into something and then you get stuck. I want you to see a path. So I want these individuals to be on a path so that they can say, okay, I'm going to do this for the first 2 years, and then I'm going to move to this. And again, it's never a ladder, so it's not always 100%, but I can show them different pathways that they can go down based on how they acquire more skills once they come to the firm and what their interests become.
And that also includes, Ali, if I remember correctly, supporting their getting university degrees if they wish to. Yeah. So there
absolutely. Again, we're never saying that this isn't important. What we're saying is you don't need it to get your first foot in the door. But if when you come back here, what better way to return to university when you're actually like, you know what, I want to go to school for X because I think that's going to better me in my job, or now I have a better sense of what I want to study. We had a young woman who just recently joined my team. She was a high school apprentice. She came in and like, why do you want to work at JP Morgan? She's like, because I want to be in the criminal justice system. Like, okay, did you hear my question? So it's like, why do you want to work at JP Morgan? Like, you understand we're a financial services firm. She's like, that's okay. I just want to learn stuff. And it was just like, okay, great. You're in the right place. And she came in and she's had such a unique experience. Now we hired her full time. She still might want to go back for criminal justice and actually potentially be like, I think her dream job is to be an FBI agent one day. But she's getting grounding. She's getting grounding and just being a human being and actually work exposure. And that those bills that she was so afraid of to go to university suddenly are kind of like no longer a concern, because one, she's making a really good salary, but two, we're going to help support her. So when she goes to school, she'll have a better sense of what to study, and also be able to be supported financially and actually the tuition costs.
Excellent. Another question here from my colleague, Ali Margal is here. Your advice recommendation for getting more employers do what you are doing, the value of apprenticeships, internships, skills-based recruitment. And this is a very different philosophy of talent, right? From what you've seen. And then a couple more questions, but this is the first question. What does it take for the employers to make that pivot?
So first I would say start small. It's not doing everything at one time. I shared with you a suite of programming that has developed over 10 years of time. We did not come out and say, oh, this is what we're going to do, all 5 of these major things. And each one of those has, as you might imagine, a subset of other things underneath them. Start with what makes sense, kind of pull off some low-hanging fruit. And chances are most employers are doing something. It's just a question of, and JP Morgan was as well, but it was a bit scattershot. So when I came in, you start with a bit of an inventory. What's happening here in the firm? And how does that kind of, you start mapping it on kind of an effort versus impact matrix, is this really the right thing for us to be focusing on? And how much does this cost to actually implement? And when you look at things in that way, you get a better sense of, are we focused on the right things, or do we have gaps? What matters to our customers? What matters to our clients? What matters to you? So that it comes across and it makes sense. If you're selling water, if you're a water company, it might make sense to focus on the environment. If you're actually a company that's focused on some other type of product or service, it could make sense to focus in another place. That being said, depending upon which place you focus, there's some things that are easier and some things that are hard, but that doesn't mean you turn away. So as an example, if you go down the path of a high school apprentice, that's not easy. I'd love to say it is. I mentioned that I'm a board member. I'd love to say that's just a simple solution. Everybody should take a high school apprentice. But the value add is actually what you feel like if you want to be a part of the solution. Do you want to be a part of changing the lives and changing the system of individuals who are kind of caught in a bit of like, I don't know what to do next with my career. I don't know what to do next, like to go on to a university. Do you want to be a part of that? And do you want to train some of your young staff to actually become amazing managers and mentors to these young people so that they can actually become part of your talent pipeline? So that's a place to focus. But it really comes back to, if I go back to the beginning of what I said, focusing on what's going to matter to you and your company and to your individuals so that it actually feels like you're giving back on what makes sense. I wouldn't go for the headline. And I say this lightly because, we've done this at JP Morgan. I think it's amazing. We have this $30 billion racial equity commitment, and it's great. And we do amazing work behind it. I don't know if you get to hear everything that we do, but it can't just stop at the headline. You need to be telling the stories. You need to actually engaging your staff in what you're doing. If it's all external facing and it's just philanthropy and it's just financial, your staff get lost in the mix and you lose a great opportunity to engage people where it's going to matter. It's going to be a reason why people stay. People don't want to leave their companies. They're making their friends. These are their families. Somebody gave me a stat yesterday saying that if you do the math, depending on where you are in your arc of life, you end up spending more time with your coworkers, or an equitable amount of time with your coworkers than you actually do with your life partner. And it's just like, that's a crazy thing to think of. So they better be people that you care about and love. And if they are, it's going to be really hard to leave them. So where people are like, oh, I'm going to leave for more money. It's like, yeah, but then I'm leaving my family. Are you ready to do that? Like, make it a family, make it matter to them and make it connect. And when it really becomes that personal, it's a great way to actually differentiate you as a company.
All right, fantastic. A couple of questions I'm blending because I see the themes and the patterns that are emerging from our audience. And that is around the, you mentioned mentorship. Is there a particular training that you provide for people who actually support that talent that's coming in? Any training? What kinds of skills are you looking for those people to assist this emerging talent to actually integrate into the company?
So it's a little bit of a 101 on like who's coming in. It depends on the program. If you're focused on high school students, yes, like you're not getting somebody who has life experience. You're not getting they do have some life experience, but different than what you might expect from somebody who's over 18 versus under 18. So a little bit of like, this is what you can expect. We do a lot of that training based on the population who's coming in. When we think about emerging talent who are adults, who are going into full-time roles, we do a very similar training that we did when we first started getting deeper into working with veterans, people who are coming out of the military, where we said, this is something you can expect when you're working with somebody who's in the military and the way that their mind might work. This is something you can expect from an individual who might have chosen to get educated differently. We still are in this culture or society where, like, you could go and get your coffee at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, you bump into somebody like, hey, where'd you go to school? And then when somebody responds and they say, well, John Jay High School, you're like, no, I meant college. And it's just like, well, I didn't. We don't want that to be an awkward moment, but we actually have to educate both sides of the equation. So to be fair, when I'm bringing individuals in who have been educated differently, who might not have a traditional university degree or a more common university degree, the reality is that for the near term and probably for the long term, that's going to be an imbalance. So at my company, more people will have a university degree than won't for a while. When you have 300,000 people, it's going to take a while to shift that. That being said, that doesn't mean it's wrong or it doesn't mean it's right. What it means is that when we're hiring somebody in, we're saying, listen, people are going to ask questions. People are going to be interested. So we kind of educate both sides of it. There's some formal programs that you can use, like iMentor and others that are like great within the city. They can help facilitate some of those mentor relationships, but we absolutely train. We don't assume that this is going to be like obvious as to how to work with individuals who might come from different backgrounds, but we also don't stigmatize them. We don't be like, oh, just, they're really different. They're different, but what's in an amazing way. So we're just saying here, we say, just so these individuals are coming from different backgrounds, and you should actually assume that everybody does. Just because they all, somebody comes with a university degree doesn't mean they don't have a unique and interesting background. So we try and stretch it in to the broader staff as well.
That's an excellent answer. More technical question here. Somebody is sharing that at their company, they're using Pymetrics as a recruitment tool. What tools do you use to ensure an equitable recruitment process?
So At JP Morgan, we are using Pymetrics to a degree. It's definitely something that I know some people are really happy with. There's using a lot of different things. So Pymetrics is one. That's a bit of a gamified tool, if I recall. I don't use it directly, but I know it's a bit of gamifying for those who aren't familiar with Pymetrics. They kind of gamify the experience to get a sense of like whether or not somebody's a good fit for your role. In my area, we tend to focus a lot actually on these hackathon models. So we create experiences that last anywhere from 12 to 24 hours. And we invite individuals in to work in team-based environments to actually ideate on something. Now, it could be a focus on data, it could be a focus on a project, it could be a focus on coding. We pick a skill set and they're ideating actually usually for real clients in the social good space. And they're creating solutions that after working for 12 or 24 hours are coming out with some great prototypes. What's happening over those 12 to 24 hours though, is they're surrounded by employees who are watching their engagement. It becomes a 12 to 24 hour job interview. So imagine you're in a space for 24 hours. We do give you a place to sleep. We are feeding you nonstop. There's a lot of caffeine flowing, but these individuals are becoming their true self. This is an individual who's actually getting, they got tired, they got cranky, but you know what? Then they bounced back. They brought in the team. They connected with people that they'd never known before. They had a problem, but then they resolved it. We watch it all. It's not just give me a time in your background or in your life when this thing happened and build a scenario. It's like, I'm just going to make something up to sound good. I'm actually going to show you because I'm going to live it for the next 24 hours. It's been a tremendous way for us to recruit talent in creating these environments for individuals to engage in. So, and then the individuals on the other side of it is that, hey, we're JP Morgan. You know what? We don't all wear suits. We don't all have ties. We don't all have leather shoes. We can be really fun and casual. And over those, and people get nervous when you meet somebody on a traditional interview, you're not even sure you're meeting the real company. So it's a great way for them to get to know us and make an educated decision. And what's interesting is when we use the hackathon model, within a day after the hackathon, we're out with offers. So we're giving a large percentage of individuals who participated an offer to join. And typically within 18 to 24 hours, those offers are all accepted. When we give a regular offer through a traditional, like, hey, you went to an interview, you sat and you met with 2 or 3 people, you sat, across the table, you had your folder, I read your CV. Those offers, we always give 10 days for any offer for people to decide. It's just that ones who come to the hackathon, they decide right away. Ones who go through traditional recruiting, sometimes they ride it out for 10 days because they just, during those 10 days, they're trying to get to know, what did I not get to know about your company? What else can I learn? Another great tool that's out there that you might want to check is something called Forage. So Forage is a really interesting tool where they actually create simulations, or kind of when somebody's like, what's it like to work there? And it's like, well, actually go check out Forage. So individuals are now using Forage on their resumes and saying, well, I took these different Forage modules, and they're becoming more educated when they go into an interview about what it would actually really be like. And that's been a really interesting. So we have like something like 13, 17 different Forage modules that we've created where candidates coming into interview can actually explore different opportunities at the company. It's been great to have them come in more educated on what might happen.
So that is an experiential
Yes.
way to actually put people in situations, working in teams, etc. Phenomenal. This is very, very interesting. The question around purpose, and do you think that the purpose should change, or how will your purpose change depending on the readiness of the company, or is it just based on kind of the evolution? That's from Kara. You kind of grow as your business expands, etc. Your purpose adjusts, or do you see any kind of specific pivots in the evolution of purpose? That was the question.
I think it's a great question, and I feel like it might require a deeper answer, but my initial thoughts on that are really, your purpose should be connected to your people, and your people are your talent, your customers, and your clients, and your community. And as long as their purpose isn't changing, then your purpose isn't changing. So, and it might have some flex or some variability, but I don't think it really changes. What I think changes is your ability to deliver purpose-based programming. So you may only be able to do 1 or 2 programs when you first start. You may actually start them and say, well, that was interesting, but it didn't really work. And I need to pivot on what I'm offering from a program standpoint. But it's not actually the purpose that's changed. It's just that you had a good solid grounding in what your purpose was, but you're not actually achieving it in a sense, or being able to deliver on that. So that's what's pivoting over time. But I don't think the purpose necessarily changes too much.
Oh, that's an excellent answer. One more question from Lisa Bing, one of our faculty members. Beyond high school and college, what other sources of this emerging talent do you tap into?
So we're working with retirees. We're working with what we call second chance programming, which is individuals that are coming out of the criminal justice system. We have a huge partnership with individuals who are U.S. and military veterans all around the world. So it's really anyone. We talk about reentry, or kind of like individuals who have taken a step out of their career for a period of time. Many times that could be a woman who stepped out for childcare, or an older adult who stepped out for elder care, and those individuals are coming in. So we're open to all of it. It's just about being in that conversation at the right time and helping people see that they won't be the only. That's a really tough one. When an individual is like, okay, great, now I'm 50 and I'm coming back in. Am I going to be the only one who's coming back in at 50, but into an entry-level job? It's like, nope, there's lots of you around there, and we have to show them that as they go in through that experience. But all different populations we're open to it, very much with that skills focus.
Fantastic. And how long have you had this program and this focus?
For emerging talent?
Yes.
So we've been doing this probably for about 7-8 years. When we first started doing it, it was very much about, listen, we know that individuals are hiring people in outside of to what we were calling kind of pre-employment. So pre-full-time, which meant like an internship or an apprenticeship. People were hiring in outside of our university programming, more on a one-off basis. We were concerned, and this is in full disclosure, that might feel like, okay, well, I'm just doing favors. My neighbor calls, I've got this really great kid, could you consider hiring him in? And you give him an opportunity. The experience there isn't as equitable, as to opening it up to everybody, but also the concern there is that they're not going to have a great experience because they're kind of a one-off and they come in. So what we started doing was to make sure, first of all, when these individuals get hired in, it's for merit-based purposes only. They're coming in for the right reasons, and they're having experience. So at the end of it, at minimum, they walk out and say, that was great. They finish their experience, whether it be multi-week, multi-month. That was great. I loved that. At Ideals, like, I love that. And I'm going to tell other people how great that was, and they should go work at JP Morgan. And even better, we can convert them into somebody who's now a full-time employee. So it's been about 6 or 7 years that we've been doing it in this way, in a much more structured way, as we've been building out the programming. And we actually started with more programs because we had something like 80 when I first got the portfolio. And we're like, that's just that really can't make sense. And some of these programs had 1 or 2 people in them, which isn't creating great experience for the individual. We really wanted to make sure that the programs had a cohort feel. So think about the way we define a cohort is at minimum 3 people, which sounds really small, but think about, even if you just do 2, one person's sick or they go on holiday for a day, and then you're the only. So we want people to feel like they have a group or some peers that are participating in the same thing that they are.
Very interesting. So Ali, what's next for you? Can you share some plans, like looking into the future? Because it seems like this is the direction a lot of companies are exploring, and you're in a much more mature phase because of your leadership and just the whole organization is focused on community. How do you see this trend evolving, both for JP Morgan as well as in general with the employers, at least in the city of New York?
So I think for us, for myself, and what's next is really thinking about how do we take what we started, and we've been very much focused. We started with a tech focus. We focus on tech skills, and over time we've evolved this and said, this isn't just programming for individuals with technology skills or a tech background. This is something that transcends all skill sets and all lines of business. So that's something to kind of go deeper. But also we've recognized this as a value add for our small business clients and even our larger banking customers as well. So I've kind of shifted a bit into an advisory role. So where I've got all the programming being run, I will be brought in to sit down with our banking clients or our business clients and talk to them about what could the purpose-based programming mean for you. And we sit down and we think through, like, how can they do it to strengthen what they're trying to deliver to their talent, to their customers, to their clients. So I think that's a huge opportunity for us. But I really think that more and more, if you think about what's happening in New York, and we just made this 50 school commitment with the Department of Education around high school programming, people are recognizing that talent is everywhere and opportunity has not always been everywhere. So we need to be thinking differently about talent and creating those opportunities for individuals, but really educating and preparing employers on the other side so that when these individuals come in, they're ready to receive this talent. But the other population we need to educate is really their guardians and parents. So if you're an individual who might have come from a low to moderate income background, who might not have a university degree, and maybe have been in more of a retail or customer facing job long term, you've always believed that the American dream comes from getting a college degree, and that's what you wanted for your child. And then a company like JP Morgan comes along and says, hey, no, I'll hire them right out of high school. They don't need a university degree. And I'm going to give them a salary that very many ways might be being more than what their parents have been making. And it's just like, well, now what's that message? So it's really making sure that we're not scaring people away from education and making sure that we're educating all sides so that when they go into their higher education decisions, they do it from a much more informed standpoint. And also not forgetting that older population that might be the parents and a lot of people that we're hiring, to say, there are also great people that we could be hiring and people that we could be welcoming into our workforce, and what kind of programming is needed for that population so they feel supported when they're looking for their next thing.
That's phenomenal. And I also want to thank you, Ali. I think we're almost to the end of this session, for educating this community on what you are doing, spreading the word, and also showcasing how to do it. I think it's very, very impressive what you've done, what you've accomplished. And we at NYU are excited to have you hopefully as a partner and bring you into our classrooms, as well as share with the broader NYU community. Thank you so much. I think we exhausted the questions. And I just want to let everyone know that there will be other sessions with other companies and other speakers whom we are bringing in. And I want you to keep track of our announcements. We will have a session on leadership for the next generation workplace on October 19th, as well as getting along how to work with anyone, including difficult people, with Amy Gallo of Harvard Business Review. So these are the immediate events coming up, and I want to thank you all for joining us this afternoon. Thank you, Ali, again.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. It was really a pleasure to connect with you and your community.
Thank you.